It will record. Okay. So good afternoon once again, guys. My name is Teacher Okilo. I'm going to be your teacher today. I am a teacher of history and geography. I teach at Taiba International School. It's along Entebbe Road, around the Arkwright area there. Just immediately you leave Kitende. That route going to St. Mary's Kitende, proceed a little bit, you're going to see our signpost. So that's where I teach. I'm a teacher of geography, and assuming all of you are in senior five, whereas we may have some senior sixes who want to revise, but this is a senior five lesson. So the reason why I'm emphasizing that is because the approach is different. When I'm teaching senior five, I don't teach them the way I teach senior six. After all, they even do different curriculums. So it means that what we are going to do here, yes, we also do it in with the other class in Europe, but our approach is different when we are dealing with these two different classes. Earlier in the day, I posted in the group, I think it was Group C, Senior 5 Group C. I posted what I want you guys to come when you have already made some research. I gave you 10 questions that I want you to come when you're ready. You have some answers. We are yet to go there. So the topic I had prepared just blindly is the 1830 and 1848 revolutions. That is topic 4, senior 5. I suspect some of you guys have already gone perhaps beyond that, or some of you in the chats, people will tell me what you people have covered so that I can be in position to tell how to deal with this audience. Right. So where did you stop? I want the responses in the chats. You can respond in the chat so that I get to know which topics you have and which ones you haven't covered so that I deal with you knowing that these people covered up to here. Okay, I see someone has said up to the Congress system. Where did you stop, the rest of you? Where did you people stop? Only one person was in class. The rest of you were, can't remember.
Good afternoon, Teacher Okelo.
Good afternoon. How are you? Where
Fine,
did
thank
you
you.
stop?
We stopped on the factors that led to the rise of Napoleon, and also we discussed his domestic policies and his domestic policies.
That is Louis what? Louis what? The 16th or Charles the 10th?
No, I'm referring to Napoleon.
You stopped on Napoleon. You did not start the Congress,
No,
like
not
the
yet, teacher.
Vienna Congress.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Right. Then other people? So you guys, you were slightly behind because by this time you should have covered at least the Vienna Congress and the Congress system. Okay. Oh, someone. Yes. Where did you stop? Someone is where? Okay. Someone is saying the unification of Italy. That is topic number 5. After this, it comes after this. Okay. So as you can see, you guys are different coverage, but all of you, you are here anyway. So we are going to find how to deal with this, how to make sure that we take care of everyone. The Congress system, and then the unification of Italy, and then you have people of Napoleon yet to go to the Vienna settlement, and many others. Okay, so from what you've covered, now tells me you've covered the French Revolution, yes, Napoleon, and then you're supposed to go to the Vienna Congress or the Congress of Vienna, and then after that you go to the Congress system. After Congress system, you're supposed to go to this topic now here. That is the 1830 and 1848 revolutions. Okay, so I still am going to share what I have prepared so that we are going to see how we punch up those gaps. But I am going to share with you today about the 1830 and 1848 revolutions. So for people who have covered this topic, you should be in position to teach us and guide us. This topic, 1848 revolutions. Let me share it so people can see what I'm talking about.
You're going to hurt your brother. I show
So
you.
here is, let me share what I have. We're there. Can you see what I'm sharing? You can see my screen? Yeah, let me know if you can see my screen, guys.
Yes, teacher.
Great. All right. So let us pay attention very much, especially people who have that one topic in the middle that is skipped. We shall go there. So what is a revolution? Okay. Did you know that in 1830, again, Europe went through a revolution? In 1789, a revolution broke out in France. You know what caused the revolution in France. You know there's different events that happened during the revolution. But in 1830, again, a revolution started in Europe. And interestingly, it is started in France again. And when the revolution started in France, it is true that the revolution soon spread to other parts of Europe like bushfire. And why the revolution broke out in France? It is because the people, the leadership in France repeated the same mistakes that was done by the leaders before. In other words, in France by then, we had another leader who was from the Bourbon monarchy. This time his name was Charles X, who had succeeded Louis XVIII, and Louis XVIII was restored, you remember, restored during the Vienna settlement. So a lot of mistakes happened during the regime of Louis XVIII. And then his younger brother succeeded him in 1824. That, and he also made so very many mistakes. And therefore, inevitably, a revolution broke out in France in 1830. This revolution broke out in July. And therefore, these revolutions we are going to be talking about are commonly referred to as the July revolutions in Europe. So, the question I'm asking you guys who have covered this topic, the ones who are on the unifications, uh, in which countries did these revolutions break out? Yeah? Already I've identified for you one. France, the revolution broke out in France. Specifically, the revolution broke out in Paris. And we are later going to look at the characteristics of revolutions and where they break out, you're going to discover that many of these revolutions surely break out in towns. Many of these upheavals, uprisings usually start in the towns. Like right now, chaos in Kororo. The NRM elections, delegates conference that happened in Kororo ended in chaos, a lot of confusion. Some of you could have watched it on TV. But the people who caused the chaos, who were they? They were the youths. Later, we are going to see why the youths are easily swayed into chaos. So, in which countries did these revolutions break out? People who have already studied this topic, in which countries did these revolutions start? In yes, if you have the answer, here, you can even guess which countries witnessed the 1830 revolution from France. Yes. You can give me the response here direct, or you can also type in the chats and we see. Yes, I'm waiting for answers from people.
Teacher, if I said
Is
Italy,
someone
would I be
responding
correct?
and I'm not hearing? Yes?
If I said Italy, would I be
Yes,
correct?
it is very correct. Very correct. The revolutions broke out in the Italian states, specifically in Rome. The revolution broke out there. Later we shall discuss why these revolutions broke out there. Also, the revolutions broke out in the German states and specifically in Berlin, the current capital of Germany, that was by capital of Prussia. The revolutions broke out there. Also, the revolutions broke out in Poland, and they broke out in the current capital of Poland. And the revolutions also broke out in Portugal, and they broke out in the current capital of Portugal, Lisbon. So these revolutions were mainly urban revolutions. They were mainly revolutions that were dominated by the urban people, revolutions that were led by the elite, those people who live in homes, who get a lot of information. They are the ones who led these revolutions. The revolutions were executed by the peasants, executed by the youth, executed by the workers, executed by the urban dwellers. These revolutions were mainly an urban affair. Have you ever heard of a riot in the village? Do people in the village have a reason to riot or to rise up? Do they?
Yes,
People in the
teacher.
village rarely want trouble. So, eh, what can cause the people in the village to raise up and revolt?
Their living conditions.
If the living conditions are bad, what mainly pains them? Can they revolt because the roads are bad? Sometimes. Can they revolt because they don't have jobs? Not at all, because the village people are not looking for jobs. Many of them have their own jobs, they are farmers. So mainly, the people who arrived are the people in the urban centers and specifically in the major cities. That's where you can find people rioting and revolting. I think you heard about the riots in Kenya, yeah? When people were rioting against Ruto. You heard about the Gen Z movement. Those were the youth of Kenya. They were rioting in Nairobi, meaning that usually many of these riots are led by the youth, and mainly the youth who live in the towns. The youth of the village, they don't care. They are also like their parents. They don't mind. So let's go and see in which countries these revolutions broke out. There you can see. The revolutions broke out in those countries, and you can see the leaders who were overthrown, and in some cases, the reasons why the revolutions broke out. You see that in France, it led to the downfall of Charles X, and it led to the rise of a new leader. We shall talk about that leader later. It led to the rise of Louis Philippe, who was the leader of France from 1830 years, 1830 to 1848. Interestingly, Louis Philippe rose up to power through a revolution. Again, was overthrown by a revolution. During his time in France, the people of France were disappointed for 18 years, 18 years of disappointment. He disappointed the people of France for 18 good years. So a revolution broke out in 1848 France again, and it led to the downfall of the man who rose up through a revolution. So that was the case of France. Then, of course, we had the case of Belgium. The capital of Belgium is Brussels. That's where the revolutions also broke. Anyway, so sorry, my network went off slightly. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was still talking of Belgium, that the revolution broke out in Belgium because the Belgians voted because of the Dutch. So during the Vienna settlement, you guys remember, the Belgians were punished for collaborating with Napoleon. And so they were forcibly placed under the Dutch rule. But in that process, the Belgians, together with the Dutch, were forced to live together, and they formed the Netherlands what? Kingdom. So the Belgians were not happy because of that. And so by 1830, they were still not happy, and they decided to revolt because they wanted what? Independence in 1830. So that's the story behind the Belgian Revolution. Then, of course, we had Poland. The people of Poland were forcefully placed under Russia. And so they were also revolting because they wanted independence from Russia. Then we had, of course, the Italian states. If I may ask, what happened to the Italian states in 1815? How were the Italians treated? Who can remember how the Italians were handled during the Vienna settlement? The states were given to which state? Who recalls that? The Italians were placed under Austria by the Vienna peacemakers. So the Italians were revolting, they wanted independence. We had Naples, the Sicilies. We shall talk about that later. We had Portugal that also revolted because of absolute
Spider-Man.
Zero 0758.
My Wi-Fi is on and off. I pray it now stabilizes. Anyway, so can see the countries where the revolutions broke out. We had France, had Poland, Belgium, Italian states, Portugal, and German state. But now, this now tells that in some countries, these revolutions did not break out. For example, in Britain, the revolution did not break out. The revolution didn't break out also in Russia. And the question is why? Why did these countries not go through a revolution? We shall go into that. So now, what do you think were the causes of these revolutions? Let us now go into serious business. What were the causes of the 1830 revolutions? What caused the revolutions in Belgium, in Lisbon, in all those areas where the revolutions broke out? What do you think were the causes of these revolutions? Yes. Can we brainstorm now? And we'll see what were the causes of the 1830 revolutions, members. Yes. Who wants to share with us their findings? What do you think were the causes of the 1830 revolutions? Let me first stop sharing. What do you think were the causes of these revolutions? Of course, the revolution broke out because of social, political, and economic reasons. But what were the causes of these revolutions? Hmm? What do you think were the causes of these revolutions? Someone who can share with us their insight. I had people here who had, okay, someone is saying the influence of the 1789 revolutions. I see, is this Joan? Deborah, your hand is up. Please share with us what you want to say. Economic hardships, okay, economic hardships. So that means that in these countries where the revolutions broke out, the economic issues, like what? Like unemployment, like inflation, like hunger, like what exactly that caused the revolutions? Joan, your hand is still up. In case you have something to say, you can talk now. Okay, I think Joan has given her answer. But let me just share with you that unemployment, there was unemployment. I can see here answers are coming. Unemployment problems, there were restrictive policies. Someone should explain to us what those restrictive policies were like. And specifically, restrictive policies were exactly in France, in Belgium, in Poland, or exactly where were the restrictive policies? But the answer is correct. The restrictive policies were there. Maybe we could dive into one of the case studies and we see what caused these revolutions. I think let us first focus on Belgium and we see what were the causes of these revolutions. Can you see what I am sharing now? The causes of the 1830 revolutions in Belgium or in Brussels. Just picking out one of the case studies. Yes. Anybody who wants to explain some of the points that I'm sharing there in respect to Belgium, why the people of Belgium revolted, you're going to find that the Belgians had a very good reason to rise up and demand for change. Yes, who wants to explain some of those issues I'm sharing, causes of the 1830 revolutions in Belgium? Anybody who is ready, I give you the platform. Yes? How did the 1830 revolutions, how did the Vienna settlement of 1815 cause the 1830 revolution in Belgium? Let me give you an example. The Belgians were forced. They were forced to live with to unite with the Dutch to form the Netherlands Kingdom. But the Vienna congressmen ignored the cultural and historical differences between these two nationalities. The Belgians were Catholics, the Dutch were Protestants. The Belgians were French speakers. Their language they speak is French. But the Dutch also, you all know that they speak their language, the Dutch language. The Belgians, their staple food is wheat bread. The staple food of the Dutch is Irish potatoes. The Belgians, their occupation, they are industrialists, but the Dutch were farmers. So, looking at all those fundamental differences, it is clear that it would not take long before the two disagree. And therefore, it is correct for us to conclude that the Vienna Congress and therefore, when you're explaining the causes of the revolutions in Europe, you can say that one of the causes of the 1830 revolutions was the Vienna what? The Vienna settlement. So I think that is very clear. The number two, the religious divide between the Belgians and the Dutch. I've already said that the Belgians were Catholics, and then the Dutch were Protestant. But it is important to recall that the Dutch were the rulers, and therefore they imposed their religion, that is the Protestant religion, on the Belgians. The Belgians also wanted to have freedom of worship, but the Dutch did not give them that freedom. And therefore the Belgians rose up to fight because of religious what? Religious differences. So again, you can say that one of the causes of 1830 revolutions in Europe was religious what? Religious differences, specifically among the Dutch or between the Dutch and the Belgians. There was also an issue of language conflict. I already mentioned earlier that the Belgians speak French, and the Dutch, of course, were speaking their language, that is the Dutch language. And because they were the rulers, they imposed the Dutch language on the Belgians, and they did not give the Belgians any chance to speak their language. That means that the Dutch language was the official language. The Dutch language was used in church, in trade, in schools, everywhere. And all publications in French were heavily censored, meaning that they would not be free to speak and promote their language, the French language. And you know how the French people are very, very proud of their language. So, in a way, the issue of language again also caused a revolution, specifically between the Dutch and the Belgians. So they disagreed on the issue of language. Then there was political exclusion. Here it means that the Belgians were underrepresented in the government positions. The Belgians were underrepresented in the parliament. There were few representatives in the parliament who represented the Belgians. And again, unfortunately, the Belgians were sidelined. Very few of them were given government positions. There were very few army commanders who were Belgians, very few ambassadors who were Belgians, very few Belgians who were having those prominent positions in the government. So the Belgians felt they were marginalized, they were sidelined, and so they decided to rise up to fight for independence. And therefore, this now means that the Belgian Revolution, therefore, was mainly a nationalistic what? Uprising. And then we have economic grievances. Economic grievances here meaning that the Belgians disagreed on economic treatment. I'll give you an example. The Belgian staple food was, I said earlier, was staple, was wheat bread. And then the Dutch staple food was Irish potatoes. But it's interesting to recall that the Belgian staple food was heavily taxed. In other words, they deliberately made life very hard for the Belgians by taxing highly wheat bread. And therefore, the Belgians felt that the Dutch government was deliberately trying to make life very difficult for them by imposing a very high tariff on wheat bread. And so the Belgians again felt justified to rise up and fight for survival. So you can see there were issues to do with economic grievances, political exclusion, language conflict, religious differences, so many issues. And then here, another reason you can see censorship and repression of, or putting a lot of restrictions on the press. The Belgians wanted also to remain free, to freely associate, to freely express themselves in the media and everywhere. But it's interesting that mainly the Belgian media houses were heavily censored. The newspapers, radios, all that were heavily what? Censored. And therefore, that also angered the Belgians greatly and made them to revolt. I know of some social media platform that was banned here in Uganda in 2001 during the elections. I don't know whether you people can access Facebook, but if you can access it, it means that you are violating the law. Otherwise, you're not supposed to see Facebook. And if we are not careful, even this time they may ban more media platforms. So Ugandans have to behave very, very well. Otherwise, they may cut us off from the whole world. What I'm trying to emphasize here is that the government has the power to restrict the flow of information. And in today's world, they target mainly the social media, what? Social media platforms. There was heavy taxation on the Belgians compared to the Dutch that caused resentment and eventually a revolution. There was the influence of the 1830 revolutions in France. Someone mentioned the influence of the 1789 French Revolution. Maybe at this point I should mention this, that by that time in France, by that time in Europe, people would say that when France sneezes, the rest of Europe catches the cold, meaning that it was fashionable to copy from France. Everything that was happening in France was fashionable for everybody in Europe, including the revolution. Here in Uganda, there was a time we had a haircut called the French cut. It was fashionable to have a cut. Here in Uganda also there was a time when we used to have a type of roofing houses that was called the French kind of roofing, the French roof. Yes. So, in other words, I'm trying to tell you that the people of France for a long time have been ahead of events. Many people want to copy from France, and it did not start yesterday. It started long time ago. There was also discrimination in administration, where the Dutch dominated all the government positions. I already mentioned that. Army commanders, ambassadors, all of them were mainly Dutch. The Belgians felt sidelined, so they felt they had to solve the problem by revolting. And lastly, the growing sense of nationalism among the Belgians. They wanted just independence. They just wanted to be independent from the Dutch. As I already said, the Belgians were industrialists. So the Belgians actually looked at the Dutch as an inferior group, and therefore they wanted independence from that group that they felt was inferior, and yet they were ruling them. So what happened? In 1830, the revolution broke out, and it is true the revolution ended in favor of the Belgians because the Belgians were able to get the independence from the Dutch. And maybe that now takes us into the effects of the revolutions. But we haven't looked at other revolutions elsewhere. We have only concentrated on Belgium. So what happened elsewhere in Europe? What happened in other places? What were the causes of the 1830 revolutions in Italy? What were the causes of the 1830 revolutions in the German states? What were the if causes of these revolutions in other places? So people have covered this topic. Can you people guide us? What caused the 1830 revolutions in the Italian states? John and others. I can see many people have Joan Deborah, Joan, another Jermaine. So people tell us, what were the causes of these revolutions elsewhere? Apart from those that we have talked about. Or you want to convince me that those causes cut across. Yes. Anything you want to add? Okay. Let us now look at the Italian states. These revolutions broke out in the Italian states, I've already mentioned. In the Papal states, those were the states that were mainly led by the Pope. And then the revolutions mainly concentrated in Rome. And then why did the revolutions break out in the Italian states? Again, you're going to find that, again, the people of Italy also revolted because they were forcibly placed under Austria, so they wanted independence. So nationalism now also drives the Italians to revolt. Also, among the Italians, because they were also under foreign rule, it also means they were under also these very many oppressive and suppressive policies. Specifically, we are talking about the Metternich what? The Metternich system. I am seeing some people asking, are there some questions here? Someone is saying the French Revolution was partly responsible for the outbreak of the 1830 revolutions. The 1789 revolution gave birth to the doctrines of liberty, equality, and fraternity. These inspired the oppressive masses in the other European states to revolt against the respective governments of 1830. That is very true. Then someone is saying, good afternoon, I have just joined. But what topic is this, please? My friend, we are discussing the 1830 revolutions. That is the topic. Yes. So maybe it is a topic ahead of you. Someone had already answered the 1830 revolutions in continental Europe. Yes. So I was saying that even in the Italian states, there were suppressive and oppressive policies. Even in the Italian states, the revolutions broke out because of the Vienna settlement. Even in the Italian states, the people of Italy were revolting because of nationalism. So you realize that these revolutions shared very many issues that were disturbing almost every country that was not yet independent in Europe by that time. About the case of Poland in Warsaw, it's important to recall that the revolution succeeded first and again failed. Yes, in France, the revolution succeeded completely because the leader was overthrown. In Belgium, the revolution also succeeded completely. So, in other words, later when you start discussing the characteristics of these revolutions, you're going to realize that in some cases, the revolution succeeded. In some cases, the revolution succeeded and again failed. In some cases, actually, the revolution first failed and again succeeded. Yes. So, I think we have now gone through the general causes of the 1830 revolutions. Maybe if someone has something they want to ask or something they want to add, so we can first of all go into that and answer session, and we see any question regarding the causes of these revolutions, members, before we proceed to other areas. Yes, Kimbabas, what is the question?
Teacher, I have a question. So, in regard to the causes, I realize the causes are mainly referring to the Dutch and the Belgians. I was inquiring whether this this started because you mentioned earlier that the 1830 revolutions in France in Europe emerged from France. How come majority of the causes involve the Belgian and the Dutch rather than the French people? Yeah.
Yes, please, Kimbabas, I heard your question, but I didn't hear the whole of it. I wish you could ask again or you type for me
Oh,
because
sorry,
you kept
teacher.
on.
My inquiry was in the
Mm,
causes. We Majority of the causes involve issues between the Dutch and the Belgians.
mm,
My inquiry is if the 1830 revolutions in Europe began in France, why do we see
mm,
um, the causes mainly focused on the Belgians and the Dutch?
mm.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for that inquiry. You realize that I only shared one case study, and that is the Belgian Revolution. And I just wanted to use it as an area of learning. But otherwise, if we're to talk about France, specifically France, you're going to realize that the revolution broke out in France for some unique reasons. For example, the revolution broke out in France mainly because of the unfavorable policies of Charles X. I'll give you an example. When Charles X took over power from his elder brother, Charles X changed so many things. The first thing that he did that annoyed the people of France, he initiated a compensation scheme. He brought in all the migrants. People had left France a long time ago, and he brought them back to France, and then he paid them. He set aside 40 million pounds to give them as settlement package. The people of France didn't like that. Then in 18, I think around 1827, he brought in a new law that I think that was called the St. Cloud ordinances. So he started limiting the people's political freedoms from 1827. In fact, he reached a point and he said that I would rather chop wood than reign in the fashion of the Queen of England, meaning that he was not ready to grant any freedoms to the people of what? Of France. When he was coronated in 1824, he was coronated in the medieval fashion, where they used what they called the holy oil that had been preserved for centuries. So they would dip a needle, a sharp needle, into that oil and pierce the king in different parts of his body 7 times to make him holy. And then after that, he went to hospitals claiming to have divine powers to heal the sick. In other words, I'm trying to show you that Charles X now restored all the bad policies that his predecessors had used. And that is partly why the revolution broke out in France. So, whereas I concentrated in Belgium, if you study the history of France, you're going to realize that there are some causes that are not exactly the same with the causes of the Belgian Revolution of 1830. For people who are, if you're reading Ogwal Ambrose, European History by Ogwal Ambrose, it has all these issues we are talking about. I think even there's this other purple book, it's called, I'm forgetting the writer, but Ogwal Ambrose has all these issues explained very well. And by the way, the history of modern Europe, I think, is the simplest, the most available history you can ever look for. All these things we are talking about have already been documented somewhere in is this somewhere. So if you go to YouTube, you will find all documentaries of all these topics we are talking about. If you go to any search engine, you're going to find everything about European history. It has been documented. So all these things are available. Yes, someone has just reminded me about the purple book Muhanguzi Hussein has all these issues we are talking about. So please, if you want more details about these things I'm discussing or we are talking about, please refer to Mohanguzi. You can refer to Ogwal and even other books that have been written by other writers. In fact, these days life has been made easy. You can even use AI to generate some of these points. However, verify some of these points generated by AI. In fact, they even warn you that AI can make errors. So verify. It is very important to use the book alongside your device. Any other question? I was asking for questions, and then somebody asked me a question that has taken a lot of one time. Any other question? So please, you can still go back and read the different causes of these revolutions. Right. So let me go back to what I prepared for you guys. Where did we end? We ended on that one. Causes of the revolution. We have already talked about them. Okay. Now let me share here this one so that you see that there are some causes that are the same, but some are really unique there. So in all these countries, you're going to find that the revolutions were caused by those issues that appear on your screen. The Vienna settlement, nationalism, religion, middle class frustration, influence of the earlier revolts. We talked about that, economic hardships, suppression of people's freedoms, And lastly, from the issue of foreign domination. That is what caused these revolutions generally. Those are the issues that caused the 1830 revolutions. Now, what were the other causes of these revolutions? We have already mentioned some of the causes in other countries, like in France, I mentioned Poland. So we now know what were the causes of these revolutions. Now, what were the characteristics of these revolutions? We have talked about them now. So, what were the characteristics from what we have discussed? What do you can you see as the characteristics? If we say that these revolutions were mainly caused by the Vienna settlement, it is correct. All the revolutions were caused by the Vienna settlement. Yes. If we say that these revolutions were mainly concentrated in urban centers, it is also correct. All these revolutions broke out in major European cities. And they broke out in major European cities in countries that were still agrarian. In other words, in countries that were still depending on agriculture as their only source of survival. So these were urban revolts breaking out in agrarian communities. They were led by the peasants. The peasants were the leaders of these revolutions. They were the people executed the revolutions. In other words, the peasants were the ones who felt terrorized by their governments, and so they decided to rise up. If I may ask, today, if a revolt is to happen here in Kampala, okay, anywhere in Uganda, which group of people do you think are going to support it most? The poor people or the wealthy people? Which people will be supporting it? Yes? It's in the response here. Who are they going to be? All revolutions broke out at the same time. They were simultaneous. True. Somebody saying that it is obvious the poor people will be supporting the revolution. But why? Why are you against the poor people? Why are you saying that the poor people will be the first to support the revolution? Because they don't have food, because they don't have jobs, because they have nothing to lose. The poor people are blaming the government for causing all these problems. And they're saying that someone is saying that the poor people will be supporting because they are the ones that feel most oppressed by the government. They feel the government is not giving enough, and so they will be supporting the revolution. But can I tell you something here in Uganda? What was happening when Besigye was having his campaign of walk to work? Did the people walk with him? Or we did not have poor people at that time? Why didn't the people of Uganda support Besigye and his campaign of walk to work? Ugandans are funny people. When something is happening, they want to wait to watch on TV. They want to take videos and share on social media. So it is true that the revolutions were planned by the middle class. The revolutions were executed by the peasants, and they were targeting the government, of course. So that is how the revolutions uh, happened during that time. Then someone is saying here, all the 1830 revolutions were inspired by the earlier revolts. For example, the 1789 French Revolution. True. All these revolutions were outcomes of those earlier revolts. It is very correct. Any other? All these revolutions were led by the middle class. I think I've already mentioned that. Mhm. All these revolutions were urban-based. They were mainly in urban centers. That's where the revolutions were concentrated. Now let's go and ask and see the relevance of this. How relevant is this to our contemporary situation today? Right. So here we are. We are asking, I am asking you now. Give me the answer. Rate Uganda. Can you rate Uganda on a scale of 10 and give your reason? What did you say? Rate us, rate us. On a scale of 10, we want to know how are we performing here? Yes? If you were to rate the Ugandan government in terms of service delivery, in terms of governance, in terms of everything on a scale of 10, what do you give the government? Someone is saying, 5. Okay. Where is the other 5? That means, yes, I can see. Kembabas, give us. What do you want to tell us? Rate the government on a scale of 10 and give us your position.
I'll give it a 6 because if you compare it to other African governments, it's trying in terms of peace. We are a relatively peaceful country. We don't have a lot of, like, we're not in war compared to Congo and other countries. But in terms of service provision and getting stuff done, they're a bit negligent in terms of service provision, like transport. You can see in certain areas that are favorable, there are good roads, but then in other areas, there's poor transport facilities, and then again the corruption in the government and how they are really neglected the needs of the people who actually need the help. Like government hospitals lack medicine, but yet the salary of an MP is quite hefty. So, in terms of service provision, probably a 3 or even a 0. Yeah.
Okay. So what should the people of Uganda do? Should we go on the streets or should we just write a petition to the parliament? Or is it the right time for us to rise up and just storm Kampala and overthrow this government? Okay, that is something to think about. What we are trying to do here, we are trying to see how, what do we learn from Europe? What do we learn from the 1830 revolutions that can also affect us here? For example, what did the people of France go through that perhaps we are also going through, and how can we fix all this? That is what is very important now. So, other people, what do you say? Rate Uganda on a scale of 10 and give us the reasons why. I think you've heard the Kembabazi's argument. On the other side, she said we are performing well because we have enjoyed peace. We are relatively better than many African countries. But also on the sad side is that we are not getting the true value of what we are supposed to get because we have a lot of corruption happening. And that is actually what caused the revolution in other countries. Okay, let me see in the chat if there's anybody who has anything to say. Okay, not much. Other people, they are still thinking. So if you were to be a leader, like put yourself in the position of maybe, let us say, Ruto of Kenya, you had his troubles, his problems. And then we also have our own here, the government of Uganda, and then other governments around us. How do you think we can avoid, if you want to avoid a revolution from your own people, what can you do? If you were the one in position of the leader now, what would you do to make sure that you don't cause a revolution for yourself? You don't cause yourself to be overthrown. Do you just build a strong army and stay knowing the army is going to save you one day if there's trouble? Or you're going to also appease the people by giving them service, which is actually the reason why you're there. Make sure you generate employment for people. World over, people revolt because of unemployment. I can see Arnold, you have something to say? Arnold, when you're ready, you speak. I can see maybe here in the chats. And somebody is saying that I read 5. It is because peace services and other side government is not respecting the rights of the people. There is a lot of corruption. Many negative constitution reforms have been taking place. A good example is the age limit. This age limit thing brought trouble yesterday. The NLM election is when Kadaga said that I was responsible. I am the one who made it work. Now you are throwing me away. What? Anyway, it is true that was a negative. That was a negative. Removing the age limit and then now removing the term limit. And now people are not even ashamed of talking about it. What? Disgusting. Anyway, let's proceed. So saying that make sure you generate employment for your people. Make sure your people have food. Do you know that we have war all around us because of food? Ask yourself, why do we have war in Congo? Why do we have war in Sudan? Why do we have war in Somalia? You're going to realize that it is partially because of food. So one of the things you should make sure your people have first is food. Once you have enough in stock, you're going to reduce chances of what? Of war. And then, if you want to avoid the revolution, please reduce on foreign what? Influence. These foreigners can cause war in your territory. So make sure you reduce the interaction between your people and the people outside. In fact, even reduce on the number of people who come to settle in your country, then they can cause you trouble. I don't know whether you heard about this story of Chisekedi, who was almost, almost overthrown by a mercenary. You see, just a few men had come to overthrow Chisekedi in Congo here. Why? Because Tshisekedi allowed many foreigners to settle in his territory. So make sure you reduce the number of foreigners. Yes. And then another thing you should do, of course, make sure that you don't overtax your people. Overtaxation causes revolts, so reduce on the rate of taxation for your people. If you do that, you're going to reduce chances of a revolution. Make sure you also improve on infrastructure. People usually want good roads, good housing. Those are the things that make people revolt. So make sure you improve on those what? On those things. Yes, I can see somebody's hand is up. John. You have something to say? Joe and Deborah, your
Respecting
hand is up.
respecting
Human
human
rights.
rights, respecting
Okay.
and protecting citizens. Respecting and
Okay.
protecting citizens' human rights, including freedom of speech, assembly and press, and others.
Association, assembly. Yes, continue. Joan, please continue. Freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of everything. If you grant your people all those freedoms, my friend, you are going to appease them, you're going to reduce on their chances of revolting, they will keep you in power for long, and you are not going to have trouble with your own people. But otherwise, if you continue marginalizing them, you're going to have a lot of trouble. You're going to have a lot of trouble. And if you're not careful, they will overthrow you in no time. They will overthrow you. What else should we do if we don't want revolutions to break out when we are in power? Yes? Anything else that we should do?
I feel
Yeah.
like we should also be open to the people's opinions, like the people are leading. We should be able to get feedback from them in
Mm,
how we are leading them. And let's
mm,
say we have a problem with a system of administration I've put in place. Me
mm,
being able to listen to them and understand why they are not in agreement with it and put it in place can help prevent um, revolutions and also maybe negative reactions to my rule. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. What is your comment about elections? Is that one way of opening political space to the people, especially if the elections are free and fair? Don't talk about these elections of Colorado right now, where they count 1, 2, 50, 51, 81, 120. I don't understand that mathematics. Oh, so we are saying the elections should be free and fair so that everybody feels that they have been won or they have won the election or they have won the position. So one way you can reduce tension between you and your people is by opening the political space, organize regular elections, and let the elections be free and fair. If you are the leader and then you have lost the election, accept and go home and do other things. Yes. So you should open political space so that people know that their opinion matters when it comes to opinions that the government should take seriously. I think another thing you should not forget is education. Yes, let me first see what John is saying. What should we do?
Um, I'm adding on, like
Yes.
encouraging citizen participation. This is where all citizens should
Mm, it-
be engaged in decision-making processes like regular elections, public
mm,
consultations, and other mechanisms.
mm.
Mm, that's what I have.
Oh, thank you very much, John. People should own the government. True, they should own the government. They should be part of the decision-making process, and they should now know that if anything goes wrong, it's not only one person who is responsible. In fact, when people rise up against you if you're the leader, that is another way of communicating to you that you are responsible for our suffering. So if there is a problem and people were part of the decision-making process, like Jonas said, through elections, yes, people will own it up and people will not blame you. People will not witch hunt you. I was reading in the newspaper, I think yesterday, where they were saying that Jose Kabila, the former president of Congo, before this one here, Tshisekedi, now they have sentenced him to death in absentia, that he is identifying with the M23 of Congo. So the president, the current president of Congo and the people of Congo believe that Jose Kabila is responsible for the insurgencies that is happening right now in Congo. You can imagine the former president is doing that to his own people. Yes. So we are saying that if you don't involve people, people can start to do that. And perhaps we are saying that for the case of Congo now, maybe the M23 people, these rebels of Congo here, perhaps they feel they have been sidelined for a long time. They are Congolese. And other people around are supporting them, perhaps because the government of Congo is not listening to them. Yes. So when you don't open political space, you're going to witness more and more war. In fact, if you're not careful, it can even end in an assassination. The people can execute you if you don't listen to them. Right. So let's now go to the last segment. The last segment of our session today, and that is trivia time. What do you think were the effects of this war, these revolutions? What were the effects of the 1830 revolutions, like the general effects? Look at France, look at Italy in Rome, look at Warsaw, look at all those places where these revolutions broke out. What do you think were the effects of the revolutions, members?
Chokelo,
Yes,
I have a question.
yes.
Were the 1830 revolutions, did they involve violence or they were peacefulish? I don't know.
The revolutions in France were violent. The revolutions in the Belgian, in Brussels were violent. So the revolutions were both peaceful and violent. They started peacefully and ended violently. So I hope I've answered you.
Yes, please. Thank you.
So that means that obviously there was destruction of life, there was loss of life and destruction of property in all these revolutions, all these places where the revolutions took place. There was loss of life and property. Yes. Also, in all these places where the revolutions broke out, there was overthrow of old leaders and emergence of new ones. I'll give an example. In France, Louis Philippe replaced Charles X. So there was a rise of new leaders, but also overthrow of the old what? The old leaders everywhere in Europe. Also, in many cases, or in some cases where the revolution succeeded, there are some nationalities and countries that got independence. For example, the Belgians got the independence from the Dutch. So there was also independence that people acquired. Yes, I'm waiting to see if there's any response. There was expansion of the voting rights. In other words, there were political reforms that were made. Yes. In areas where the people were being sublimed, marginalized, the political space now had to be opened. So we are saying, for example, among the people Poland, The people of Poland are called the Polish. So the Polish people, because their revolution first succeeded and later failed, the government had to make a few reforms here and there to make life a little easier for the people of Poland. So there were some political reforms that came up. Any other effect you guys are thinking about now? Yes, Joanne.
The inspiration for future movements like the 1830 revolution inspired future movements for democracy, liberty, and nationalism across Europe and even beyond. I think that's what I have.
Yes, thank you so much. Let me first receive. Thank you. Let me first name. Okay, guys, let's proceed. We are left with a few minutes. We are still looking at the effects of the 1830 revolutions. I don't know, they have noticed that some of these effects are positive, others are negative. Others are social, others are economic, others are political. And again, you're going to see that some of the effects are going to be short-lived, and yet others will be very long-lasting. In other words, that is how you're going to be concluded. So the 1830 revolution, like we said, it led, Joan just reminded us that these revolutions now laid a foundation for future what? Revolts. For example, the 1848 revolution that interestingly actually started again in France. So these revolutions planted the seeds of future revolts in what? In Europe. And for the cases where the revolution succeeded, it inspired the other nationalities also later to revolt for what? For independence. So we are going to see that these revolutions did not just end in 1830, but the seeds kept on growing, and these revolutions later manifested in the later days. Yes. Any other effects of the revolutions, members? Can you still cite some of the other effects? Yes. Okay, Jermaine. Jermaine, you can share with us your insight. Jermaine, you can unmute yourself and say what you're saying because your hand is up, anyway.
Yes.
No, you can hear you.
My point is about that the effect of the revolution led to the establishment of constitutional monarchy.
Like where specifically?
In like,
It is true.
for example, the
The
Bourbon monarchy was thrown.
overthrow.
Yes, in France. So,
And then it in France, and it led to which government in
Napoleon.
France?
It led. It was Napoleon. What? Napoleon the third. Therefore, took over the what? Took over France.
Uh,
Yeah.
mm,
So after Napoleon the third
Thank you
taking
very
over.
much.
Okay.
Okay, maybe just to clarify a little, that in France, it is true that the Bourbon monarchy was overthrown by the 1830 revolutions, and that was Charles X. It was the rule of France by 1830. A new government was established, and that was the Orleans monarchy. The Orleans monarchy, like Jermaine said, it was a constitutional monarchy. So the new government that came in place in France in 1830 was the Orleans government under the leadership of Louis Philippe, the man who ruled France from 1830 to 1841, 1848, the man I told you about, who disappointed the people of France for 18 good years. So it led to the emergence of new governments. A case in point is the French case. That is the Orleans monarchy that was established in 1830. So some of the effects, like we said, were long-lived. Some of the effects, like we said, were short-lived. So now, our focus here, if you remember, our focus was, we go to the beginning of our lesson here. This is what I wanted us to learn. By the end of this lesson, I wanted everybody to learn the causes of these revolutions, the effects of these revolutions, and the relevance of these revolutions in the contemporary world. So I am hoping everybody is in line with that, with my aims, as I said. In the beginning of this lesson, I'm hoping everybody is what? Is there. So now we go back to our trivia. Do we still have what to ask? Okay. What were the effects of these revolutions? I think we have already discussed that. The effects of the 1830 revolutions. So is there any question you want to ask, members? Please ask now. If you have anything to ask, you can be asking right now. Yes?
Sir, I have an inquiry.
Yes.
How did religion play parts in these revolutions in specific?
How did what?
Religion.
Religion.
Yes. Why was it
Okay.
a cause? Yeah.
Just give you an example of, we talked about Belgium. We said the Belgians were Catholics, right? And the Dutch were Protestants. So religion brought conflict between the Dutch and the Belgians. Why? Because the Catholic religion was not recognized, but the Protestant religion was recognized. That is for the case of Belgium. I'll give you an example. Another case of religion, Italy. The Italians, we all know they are Catholics. But I mentioned somewhere, I talked about the papal states. Those are states that were led by the Pope. I don't know whether you're aware that the Pope is also a political leader. If I may ask, the Pope is the president of which country? Anybody who can answer that for me, chap chap. The Pope is the president of which country? Hey, nobody. Okay, let me check in the charts. Which country does the Pope lead as the president? Okay, the Pope is the president of Vatican City. Vatican City is a state of its own, not Rome, not Italy. Italy is a country, but the Vatican City that is within Rome is a political entity, and the president is the Pope. So how does religion now come, and we are talking about politics, and we are referring to Italy and the Pope? Right. Now, very many people in the Italian states by that time, very many people in the Italian states by that time wanted the Pope. Very many people in the Italian states by that time wanted the Pope to remain their president. But again, very many people wanted independence from the Pope. So in other words, we are seeing the Pope now being opposed by the people who don't want him, but also have a certain group that actually believe in the Pope. I don't know whether they've heard about this doctrine here, the doctrine of infallibility. If I may ask, how many of you here are Catholics? What happens in your church? When you go to the church, do you give a lot of respect? Do you believe that your preacher is the only person who can give you guidance? If you believe so, then you are a believer in the doctrine of infallibility. For us in the Catholic Church, the priest, to show that the priest is God's own representative on earth here, we even go to the priest and then we confess our sins. You tell the Pope, they tell the priest that yesterday you stole something, we should plead with you, plead for you with God, so that God forgives you. Now that is infallibility. So we are saying that a certain group of people wanted the Pope, a certain group of people did not like the Pope, and all of them were asking for independence. So that is again something to do with what? To do with the religion. So religion was at the center of all these political conflicts that we are calling the 1830 what? Revolutions in what? In Europe. Yes. Right. Any other question? I am beginning to see people are leaving. People are leaving. Asimwe Christine. Yeah. Kali. Any other question? If there is no other question, maybe we say we have concluded. In case members, in case you have any other question regarding either this topic or any other topic that you have covered, you can inbox me, you can share with me your area of concern, and then I'll be able and ready to support. And that is my number. It's on WhatsApp. I have another number that's on WhatsApp, but for now, you can use that one. And I'm also going to ask you people to give me your areas of concern. Those other topics, those topics that you think we should first deal with before we move forward. So you're going to inbox me those topics that you think I should include. Yeah, the areas that I should include in the next one, in the next lesson. So you share with me that in my inbox so that you proceed. I can see Geraldine, you have something to say? Geraldine, your hand is up. I can't hear you. Geraldine, in case you have something to say, because I can't hear you, you can send me a text. Send me a text in my inbox so that I get to know what you wanted to say. I'm going to share with you this PowerPoint so that you use it. Yes, Joan, you have
I
something
just
to say?
wanted to appreciate you. Yeah, I just wanted to appreciate you for your time. Because as me, I had not yet reached on that topic of the yeah of the revolution of 1830. So
1830.
yeah, I had not yet. So I want to appreciate you for that time. And I think this is my first time.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, sir.
To attend our lessons. Okay. It's fine. We are going to still continue interacting. In fact, even when you are not on these lessons, we share a lot of information in our platform, in the WhatsApp groups, in the links that we share, and the intention is to make life easy for all students. I am sure we have students here from various schools. I've only noted one of my students is here. The rest of you, you are all my students, but you're my students from various schools now. Right. So if there's nothing else we have to share, maybe I will call it a day here. We are going to have to stop here, and then we shall be continuing to interact. We shall interact with you in other forums. Here I've seen the Congress system and the Vienna settlement. Yes, I will certainly look into that in our next interaction. So have a good day. We shall meet another time. If there's anything you want to share, you can always share in the WhatsApp group. You have been a wonderful class. And here I will say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Right, we ended.